Sony isn't happy with Bungie. Is anyone surprised? If you guys don't understand the relationship between Sony and Bungie, Sony purchased Bungie and has a clause with this purchase that Bungie is independent until they're not. Until if Bungie doesn't hit certain milestones that they set themselves and Bungie agreed to, Sony fully will take over Bungie. And that's the big moment. Bungie C-level is quaking in their boots right now, because they can't estimate anything for their life right now. They are fighting tooth and nail to keep control of their own studio. But PlayStation boss wants more accountability from the studio on money and deadlines. And I feel like these are the two big things that Bungie is not good at, is managing their money and managing their deadlines. So right now, we have Final Shape that has been delayed massively. It's coming out in June now. We have the longest season in Bungie's history for Destiny 2, where they have massive drop-off of players. I wouldn't be surprised if New World outpaces, in terms of population, Destiny 2, and that would be really sad. The Sony Interactive Entertainment chairman, Hiroki Totoki, hopefully I said that name right, said during the company's recent earnings call that everybody needs to get on the same page. And that's never a good way to start. But in a QA session with the analysts following Sony's most recent financial report, PlayStation chairman praised the creativity of Destiny 2 studio, but also said he wants to see more accountability for the development budgets and schedules for the studio leadership. I mean, most games don't get a 5-6 month delay in their DLCs when they're already in financial trouble, right? So Sony is really, really hoping that Bungie does right by this and that they have a successful DLC launch. Or if they don't, they are not, it's no longer going to be the Bungie that we all know and hate or love. It's going to be a Sony support studio that Sony fully controls. Right now, Bungie is fully independent, but could you imagine being the chairman and then seeing the mismanagement of money and people? They got rid of a lot of their community management people recently. They got rid of a lot of their marketing people recently. They're trying to outsource more and more stuff now, and they're missing all their deadlines. So that means they're blowing through money. They don't have proper communication to help quell the unrest there is in the community. And then on top of that, they have the longest season they've ever had in Destiny 2. So they're just, it's not looking good for Bungie right now. But Sony announced the acquisition of Bungie in January 2022. It was a blockbuster deal seen in some ways as a counterpunch to Microsoft's takeover of Activision Blizzard. I would say that Activision Blizzard got the better deal and an opportunity to add more live service games know-how to the roster of PlayStation Studios. And I feel like that was probably the biggest reason why PlayStation bought Destiny 2 is there is not a lot of companies out there that have had the success of a live service game that Bungie has had, and for the longevity that they've had. So the wealth of knowledge there is very valuable to them. As for Destiny fan and player, no matter how well the First Ascendant turns out, it can literally be better than Forsaken, and the fan base will complain, which is, oh no, the Final Shape, sorry. I feel like with Destiny 2 player base, they will always just complain. I think like that's like their default nature now, is they will always bitch. And I think it's because they've been neglected and they haven't been heard for so long, that they will they're just angry. They're just angry now. And there's nothing that they can do other than just releasing the best possible game ever. And people will still find fault in it because they've for years have scorned their community. For years, they have nickel and dimed their community. And you know, there's that famous quote of like, hey, you know what? At Bungie, we underdeliver. Bungie made a toxic community because they ignored the community. People, it's a weird parasocial relationship when you have people that love a game so much and there's barely any other games that are catering to that type of player base, to then just be mistreated that badly. So it's a really, really unhealthy parasocial relationship they have right now. And I honestly don't think there's a way of fixing it other than to be like, yo, you know what? We're making Destiny 3 and we've learned from our mistakes. But they're not going to do that because they're already in financial trouble. They're already in the red. And on top of that, if the Final Shape doesn't succeed, Bungie is going to be gutted and they're just going to be a support studio for the rest of Sony. So yeah, I kind of agree. I think they're done. I think that they will not hit the profit margins that they wanted to hit, and they're done. You might as well just say right now that Bungie's going to be a support studio for Sony Interactive Entertainment. But it was said at the time that when Sony purchased Bungie, Bungie would operate as an independent subsidiary with the freedom to remain multi-platform and self-publish and reach players whatever they choose to play. Bungie in turn said Sony unconditionally supports us in all we are, as it begins our journey to become a global multimedia entertainment company. And I honestly think that why Sony bought Bungie, it was for two reasons. It was for the IP rights for Destiny and expanding their universe and the quote multimedia entertainment, because everybody is kind of expanding all that stuff. And I think that Riot is the prime example of that. But every other company has been trying to figure out, oh, should we make an anime? Should we make a CG, series? Should we make X, Y, and Z? And like people love it. But at the same time, it costs a lot of money and it's not guaranteed to succeed. I think Sony, because of their other divisions, that they will definitely try to make a TV series or an anime. They will utilize the knowledge that is at Bungie for live service. And thus the main reasons they bought it. I don't think they bought it because they're like, man, I really enjoy Destiny 2. I think it was just for the knowledge they have. But here's the double-edged sword for that, right? If Bungie fails and Sony takes over, do you think the people that have the knowledge, whether you hate it or love it, that made Destiny 2 what it is today, and the reason why they really bought that studio, do you think they're going to stay? So that information and that knowledge will be lost once those people leave. So that part of the equation, this massive purchase of Bungie, is going to disappear. So it's not really a win-win. That's why I was saying that Activision got the better deal here. I feel like Sony bet on a losing horse and they're not going to get their money back. And Bungie's going to become a shell of a company. But just 2 years later, that relationship is showing signs of potential strain. In December 2023, reports said Destiny 2 players' numbers had declined dramatically. Yeah, because again, that was the new season and it's long. While revenue is said to be running 45% below projections. And I would say whoever made those projections and that those were approved was in this insane optimistic headspace that they were going to continue the profits from COVID. And they got slapped in the face so hard with that. And Sony's using that against them. But morale of the studio was also said to be in bad shape following layoffs in October. I mean, anytime you have mass layoffs, you're going to have really, really somber and just bad morale. Bungie was also reporting facing the possibility of a full takeover by Sony, ending its independence. Likely to quell those concerns, he began to addressing the situation at Sony Interactive Entertainment in general, saying employees have a solid understanding of their individual roles and responsibilities, but don't necessarily understand how their respective efforts tie into the overall growth, sustainability, profit generation, and higher margins. I would say that's very true. But again, I would say that a game designer is not trained in how to understand profit margins in business. That's not part of how they get taught in school, and that's usually not part of what people teach when you're at a game company. So I understand this part of like, hey, you know what? Everybody needs to think like a director, which is really what a director is supposed to do. They're supposed to think about directing the art and the visuals and etc. about the game, but they also need to think about the profit margins and how much that will bring for the company. But the CEO is then saying, you know what? Everyone should understand their place and how to help the profit generation. And I was like, I feel like if he's saying that, I feel like he has the wrong people in charge of Bungie that aren't doing their job for profit generation. Because I would not personally expect a game designer to understand, unless they're a economics game designer, I would not expect them to understand how to generate profit. I think like this is like wishful thinking. But by providing everyone involved with highly transparent descriptions of the company and the industry conditions, as well as of analyst views, I would like to encourage them to come to their own realizations, Sutoki said. This will get everyone in the business on the same page. Then I would like them to consider what we need to do to work towards our major objectives. Again, I don't think a concept artist gives a shit about the business objectives of a game. Really, you just need better creative directors and better game designers, like economic game designers, that will get you there. And if you don't have them, then obviously you hired the wrong people. But I don't think you need to be training other people. And I think it's a great skill to have. Don't get me wrong. I think it's a great skill to have to understand the business mindset of how to run a studio or how to increase your profits or it's kind of a nice pipe dream. But he said, I visited Bungie Studios and had a meeting with the management, and I saw that employees working at the studios were highly motivated, showing great creativity as well as impressive knowledge of live service. However, I felt that there was room for improvement from a business perspective with regard to areas such as the use of business expenses. Wait, okay, so that's a little bit different. And assuming accountability for development timelines. See, like when there's like weirdly like two different sayings happening. If he's talking about business expenses and assuming the accountability of development timelines, that fully makes sense. Because you have to estimate your own work. And if you can't estimate your own work, then you're not a senior, or you're not a director, or you're not management. Because if you can't actually accurately, not even to the day, to like the week of how long something's going to take to do, well, then you're pretty fucking shit at your job. And I don't know why you're there. I hope to continue this dialogue when they come up and come up with some good solutions. So yeah, he's just in general not happy with Bungie because their development timelines are shit. They can't estimate how long things are going to take because of internal testing, or, you know, it's not hitting the quality bar they wanted. So obviously there was a miscommunication, and sometimes that happens, right? But I think Bungie has made it a sport at this point. They have perfected development delays. But it says, I'm not an investment analyst, but I know a veiled threat when I see one. My dad used to call it explaining the facts of life, while my mom preferred the phrase, you clean it up or I will. Either way, just like Tataki encouraged studio leaders to come to their own realizations, it was made very clear that although the final decision in a particular situation was mine to make, the consequences for making the wrong decision would be, well, not good for me. I mean, I feel like that's pretty standard for most fields, right? I feel like most fields are like, yeah, if I make a bad choice and it costs the company millions, in the tens or hundreds of millions of dollars, yeah, I'm probably fired. Saki, who set up in the chairman for Sony Interactive Entertainment in October and will assume the role of interim CEO in April 2024 following the retirement of longtime president and CEO Jim Ryan, may have different ideas about how Bungie should be run than his predecessor. But irrespective of the shifts that inevitably follow a changing of the guard, his impatience is understandable. Bungie blew a lot of gamer goodwill with the mishandling of layoffs. I mean, that was just a masterclass on what not to do. And then just a month later delayed the big Destiny 2 expansion, The Final Shape, from February to June, pushing into Sony's next financial year. There may be a lot riding on that. According to the December's report on Bungie, employees expect that even more layoffs will occur if Final Shape doesn't do well. I feel like that's a no. That's a no. If Final Shape does not do well, I guarantee you there will be like another 20% people laid off at that studio because they will then have to go into survival mode because they're already in the red. But meanwhile, against that backdrop, the remaining player base are enduring a massively extended season with content thin on the ground at the same time as Helldivers offering an alternative path to shooting aliens in space with your buddies. And I would say that I feel like a lot of Destiny 2 people probably love Helldivers. It doesn't have the RPG elements in terms of like the loot grind, but in general, from a basic perspective, is kind of the same game. You're in space, you got a gun, you're shooting, you're playing with a group, you know? It's not the Diablo-esque style that a lot of people enjoy, but I feel like it's a really decent alternative. And I argue Helldivers will probably still kick the shit out of Destiny 2 when Destiny 2's new expansion comes out. I'm calling it right now. I think Helldivers 2 will beat the shit out of it. But let me know your guys' thoughts in the comments below. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. Bungie's in trouble. I really think that Bungie is massively in trouble. And only time will tell if the if the Final Shape actually succeeds and Bungie doesn't go through another round of layoffs, but I wouldn't hold your breath. I really wouldn't. And I think that Sony's just going to take over, right? Make sure to join on social, say hi on Discord. We actively record these guys live on Twitch, so if you ever want to come say hi, welcome you to do so, and I will see you in the next video.